To the second lesson in the marketing and advertising module for the data analytics and business course. Today we're going to talk about evolution of advertising for companies and different methods of advertising. So the learning objectives is that by the end of this lesson you should be able to know and mention some key examples of digital advertising companies that help create the industry. And now the general organization of the market for digital advertising and how it uses agencies to speed up the process of media buying and reporting. So overall, in this series of lessons, we've talked about traditional advertising and marketing in our previous lesson. And today we'll talk about evolution of advertising companies as well as an overview of the systems for digital advertising. So now I want to talk about the evolution of media companies and take a particular example, the market of Atlanta, which is of course influential for Georgia Tech, where we are located. A similar evolution could be viewed in a number of companies, a number of cities like New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. And hopefully it will inspire you to look around in your city to see what is happening in terms of media companies. So in the 1940s, 1950s, J.B. Fuqua, a former politician in Georgia, started a radio company at first and then turned it into a television company when television became prominent. And then eventually in the 70s became a conglomerate of coal mining, trucking, movie theaters, frozen yogurt. And he created this way a Fortune 500 company based in Atlanta, Fuqua Industries, that continued. His kids took over, and then public markets still has some operations today. But by and large, Fuqua has radiated in the community by being a great benefactor for Botanical Garden of Atlanta, Emory University, and a number of things that people use, for instance, hospitals. Cox Enterprise started early on in 1898. James Cox was also a politician, in fact, quite a prominent national one. And it started in the newspaper industry. Then from there he went to television and radio stations. Today they are all put together under the umbrella of Cox Media Group. Then the family invested early on in cable TV, and that bet, which initially was somewhat iffy and potentially risky even, turned out to be extremely lucrative, where today Cox Communication is the largest revenue generator and profit generator for Cox Enterprise, both providing cable television to American household and internet service. Mannheim Auction, Auto Trader, Kelley Blue Book were recent acquisitions of the Cox Enterprise Group to go into the buying and selling of automobile through media and new technologies. As for Turner Broadcasting, where I worked for about 5 years, it was founded in 1965 by Ed Turner, the father of Ted Turner. Under Ted, it switched from outdoors advertising to TV advertising, and it grew in the cable TV space. It was merged with Time Warner in 1996, then merged again with AOL in 2001, and recently sold to AT&T under the brand Warner Media. It developed cable TV networks like CNN, TBS, TNT, Cartoon Network, Game Show Network even was acquired. So these are three companies that were very big here in Atlanta in the traditional advertising business. Now let's look at three internet companies that are not in Atlanta. They were, in fact, mostly in Silicon Valley near San Francisco. Netscape, first one, 1994, popularized the first web browser, Mark Andreessen and James Clark. And then they also brought new technologies such as JavaScript. Eventually, Netscape couldn't quite find its footing between being a technology company or a media company or a news company or a browser company, and it was sold to America Online, led by Steve Case, which then continued merging it with Time Warner. But then after the split between AOL and Time Warner, AOL had a hard time finding its profitability and eventually got sold in pieces to Microsoft on one side and on the other to Verizon. Google started only in 1998. It was a late entrant in the search engine space. After initial search engines such as Yahoo or Excite or AltaVista, if you remember those names. But it became the dominant one thanks to the technology of PageLink, which allowed the ranking of links in search results. Then it provided a Chrome browser, provided lots of consumer and business services, and today it's a subsidiary of Alphabet, which is the parent company still controlled by Sergey Brin and Larry Page. And as you may know, it has a huge market capitalization, $854 billion as of this morning. Facebook, on the other hand, started in 2004, so only 15 years ago. And it became the dominant company in social networks, social media, with offerings such as the Facebook website, of course, as well as Facebook applications, the Pages product for advertisers. Then Instagram was acquired just as Facebook was going public, WhatsApp in direct messaging, and then it's venturing to 3D technologies with startups such as Oculus. So to bring this back to Atlanta, how did Atlanta fare in the space of internet advertising? Well, we had offerings such as Internet Security Systems, ISS, which has been a great benefactor for Georgia Tech with the Clouse Computing Center. Chris Clouse donated money to revamp the computing center at Georgia Tech since he was a graduate from Georgia Tech. He was in the security space, and in the space of about 12 years, it went from zero to being sold for $1.36 billion, plus its Japanese subsidiary, ISS KK, sold for another $570, altogether $1.93 billion. WebMD, started by Jeff Arnold here in Atlanta, provided detailed health information for the public. It was an advertising play from the start, also providing some enhanced services to hospitals at one point, and eventually went public and was sold. How Stuff Works was another acquisition from Jeff Arnold, and it was also sold to NBC Digital. But both WebMD and How Stuff Works continue to exist today, WebMD, in fact, as an independent company. Vitru and Blink Media, which was a company where I worked and co-founded, were companies that provided technologies for advertisers to use social media more efficiently and provide, for a whole enterprise that may have operations worldwide, a way to manage their advertising. Green Sky, just to mention a recent internet company here in the US, provides quick loans for home builders. Recently went public and was a unicorn in the recent terminologies, in the sense that it went from startup to billion-dollar valuation in a relatively short time. So what are the systems for digital advertising? How is it organized overall? So overall, you may have a bunch of advertisers on one side and then a bunch of websites on the other where you want these ads of the advertisers to appear. So you're looking for ways to transfer myriads of ads to myriads of websites. You're doing this by creating ad placement systems that provide relevant audiences and budget allocations for each of the advertisers to all of the websites that they reach. This is done partly by creating agencies that help the advertisers with the creation, the planning, the handling of the campaign. You typically have an exclusive relationship between the agency and the client advertiser. And on the other side, you have networks There are places for the ads to run, media companies typically. They may also be just serving the ads, so passing the ad on to a media company. They may also provide measurement for how many people have seen the ads. Sometimes it's an independent measurement, so we don't rely only on what the publisher says. And they may work with competing clients and publishers, typically in anonymous fashion, like a network does. So in the middle, you have systems for optimizing these ad placements, and you do it based on the content of the pages where the ads will run and the audience relevancy. All of this, of course, can become automated, and that's where data analysis comes in. Because all of this is driven by data with some human behavior, consumer behavior in particular. But the idea of programmatic advertising has been to utilize the data to create automated system for ad placement. So interactive ad continues to be a growing ad market with big companies that we're going to see in numbers later on in this module, such as Google with its offering called AdWords, Facebook advertising, a myriad of ad networks, Google being one of them, by the way, and YouTube, part of Google, as long as a whole bunch of video sites that are providing now online video advertising. So I've mentioned Google AdWords, Facebook advertising, Google Analytics as a measurement tool for seeing what is possible to achieve through a website in terms of audience reach. And all of this is used with digital marketing analytical tools that will help you with the forecasting and the predictive behavior that you can expect by placing ads on the site 1, 2, or 3. Typically, a media plan for a digital marketing campaign may contain 20 or 30 websites, or potentially 300. Sometimes you give your ads to a network and they may literally run your ads on 1,000 blog sites. So this is not humanly possible to manage through spreadsheets anymore, and you have to use analytical tools as well as some predictive behavior tools. So you analyze your campaign performance using those tools. You apply these tools with data sets that you may have purchased of consumer demographic or psychographic, in other words, the things that people like to do or like to buy. And you analyze them to measure your marketing performance of your ad campaign. So in the next module, we're going to talk about the overall market of digital advertising today. And then next week, in the next module, we will look at how to run our own ad campaigns and do some predictive analytics on campaigns that may have run. Thank you.